So at the top of the page in the middle, you've got the song title, which is Lava Lamp. And to the left-hand side, just beneath that, it says 70s US Cop Show Funk. So that's the style or the genre of music you'll be playing. So it's 70s funk, and it's the 70s funk that they use a lot in the 70s for like cop shows, okay? So that's why it says that. To the right of that, you've got the tempo, so it says a quarter note equals 117. So the quarter note pulse you'll be feeling for this song, there's 117 of them every minute. So it's quite a fast tempo, this song. Beneath that, you can see you've got your percussion clef or your neutral clef at the start of the first bar of music. Just letting you know it's drum notation on the stave. And then beside that, you've got the time signature. So it's 4/4 this song. So you've got 4 at the top, tells you there's 4 beats in a bar, and a 4 at the bottom tells you each beat is a quarter note. So there's 4 quarter note beats in the bar. Okay, so looking at your first bar of music, you've got 16th notes on the hi-hat as single strokes. Okay, so you're just playing 1 E ender, 2 E ender, 3 E ender, 4 E ender on the hi-hat. But what we've got is we've got accented downbeats. So we need more emphasis on those downbeats. We need to hit them harder. Okay, so as the right hand's going to be playing the downbeats and the ands, what we need to do is we need to get that dynamic control between playing an accented note and then an unaccented note. Okay, so we need this. Okay, so you're accenting the downbeat and you're not accenting the and. The left hand plays the e's and as, and they're all non-accented notes, unaccented. Okay, so they're going to stay low, all the left hands. So if you put them together, you've got. Okay, so you see how the right hand's changing. You've got accent, non-accent, accent, non-accent. The left hand's just staying as non-accented notes. So there's no change in the dynamic of the left hand. So you want to get that down first, get that dynamic control between your two hands, accenting just the downbeats. Okay, so let's try that for four bars. And we can see the dynamic of the first bar, the overall dynamic is MF, which is mezzo forte. So it means half loud, which is about your normal playing level. Okay, the next bar, so bar 2, is the same as bar 1, so we're not playing anything differently. So you're just playing that bar again. And then you can see you've got a double bar line at the end of bar 2, so that tells you there's a musical change. So as we come into line 2, you can see there's a letter A in a box there, so that's telling you we're on to section A, so a new section of the song. So the first line, those first 2 bars, were the intro of the song, okay? So they're just setting up the song. You're playing there with just a funk guitar, okay? So it's nice and chilled, just setting up for the start of section A. So now we're into section A where the rest of the instruments join in, okay? So it gets a bit, there's more music in this section. So we've got the same thing in the first bar of section A, just accenting those downbeats on the hi-hat. And then in the second bar of section A, which is bar 4, we've got a change up on the 4th beat. So the rhythm changes to 4E and. So you've got 2 16ths and an 8th note on the 4th beat. And the 8th note on the and, we open. So you see there's a circle above the note that tells you to open the hi-hat. So you're just going to release the left foot to pick up those cymbals on the and of 4 to open the hi-hat. So you get that nice open hi-hat sound on the 4. Now again, with the right hand, obviously you're playing downbeats and ands. So the right hand's going to be where the open happens. So you need to make sure it's happening on that non-accented note, okay? So don't let that open hi-hat or that change of rhythm affect what the right hand's doing, okay? So accent, non-accent, accent, non-accent. So it's going to open on a non-accent and just make sure when it closes, you're back to an accent on the downbeat. Okay, so a bit of coordination there, just making sure that doesn't affect what your right hand's doing. It's easy to affect it, so just make sure you practice this. Okay, so what we're going to try now is we're going to try bars 3 and 4 back to back, 4 times through, just to get a hold of that. Okay, just making sure that open hi-hat for the 8th note doesn't affect the right hand playing the accents on the downbeats. Okay, so you need this accent. Okay, so get hold of that, and we'll try those 2 bars, so bars 3 and 4, 4 times through. And then in the third line, you can see you've got a 2-bar repeat. So that means repeat the previous 2 bars, which are those 2 bars we just played. And then we've got another 2-bar repeat. So we need to play those 2 bars again. Okay, so we play those 2 bars at the start of section A, so bars 3 and 4. We play those 2 bars 3 times. Okay, so you've got 2 2-bar repeats. And then we come on to line 4. So you can see we've got the same bar that we played at the start of the piece and at the start of section A, just accenting those downbeats on the hi-hat single strokes. And then when we come into bar 10, we're just changing up the 4th beat again. We've got 8th notes on the snare drum, and we're going to play those as right, left. Okay, they're both accented as well, so just make sure you've got emphasis on those notes. All right, so let's try bar 10 now 4 times through to get a hold of those 8th notes on the 4th beat. So we can see we've got a double bar line at the end of bar 10, so we've got a musical change coming, so that's the end of section A there. So what we're going to do now is put together the intro, the first 2 bars, with section A. Okay, so we're going to play through the whole thing. So let's try that now. So now you've linked up all those parts of the intro and section A, we're going to play it to the music. Okay, so remember the first 2 bars of the intro, you're playing with a funk guitar, just setting up the piece. And then when you come into section A, that's when the rest of the instruments come in. Okay, so the energy increases. You're staying the same on the hi-hat, accenting those downbeats, and then you've got a change up in the second bar of section A. Okay, just opening that hi-hat. You've got 2 lots of 2-bar repeats. Then you come into the last line of section A, where you just got that change up on the last bar, the 4-and on the snare drum. Now when you play the 4-and on the snare drum, you're playing it with the band. So the brass section hit those notes as well. So you need to make sure you hit them really in time, because they're band hits. The whole band are hitting them at the same time. Okay, so just make sure they're really sharp and in time. All right, so let's try section A and the intro as well with the backing track. And now at line 5, you can see we've got a letter B in a box. So this is section B, so a new section of the song. So you can see on the hi-hat, we've still got those accented downbeats. So we're playing 16th notes, accenting the downbeats. And we've got a bass drum on the 2 and the 4. Okay, so you can see there's a bass drum rest on the 1. So this is a 1-drop groove. There's not emphasis on the 1. Okay, we're playing the 2 and the 4 on the bass drum. So that's normally where the backbeat is on the snare drum. So now the backbeat's playing on the bass drum. Okay, so you really need to hit those bass drums to make this groove. Okay, to make it sound like a groove, we need that backbeat really standing out. So we've got to hit those bass drums on the backbeat, and you can see we've got an F beneath the first bar of section B. So that means forte, which means loud. So we need to bring this up the dynamic, okay, to loud. Some more energy in this part. Okay, so let's just try the first bar of section B, so bar 11, 4 times through, just getting those accents on the hi-hat like we had in the first section, but also those bass drums on the backbeat on 2 and 4, bringing up the dynamic to forte. And then looking at bar 12, which is the second bar of section B, it's very similar to bar 4, which was the second bar of section A. You've just got that 8th note on the and of 4 now, so you're changing up that 4th beat rhythm from 4E and A to 4E and. So you've got 2 16ths and an 8th note again, and we're opening the hi-hat on that 8th note. Okay, so remember you need to make sure that doesn't affect the right hand rhythm. The right hand's still playing accent, non-accent, accent, non-accent. So you accent on the 4 and you open the hi-hat on the non-accent, okay? So you still want to hear that open hi-hat sound, but you don't want it to be accented like the 4 is. Obviously with this one as well, you've got the bass drum on the 4. So you need to play the 4 with the accent, then you've got the non-accent with the left hand, and then the non-accent with the open hi-hat. And you need to open that hi-hat for an 8th note, so it opens all the way to the next downbeat. Okay, so make sure it's opening on the under 4, closing on the 1. So what we're going to try now is bar 11 and 12 back to back. Okay, so we've got a very similar thing that we had in bar 3 and 4, but we've obviously got the bass drums on the backbeat, and we're at forte now. Okay, so just make sure you can get those 2 bars down. You've got nice smooth transitions between the 2 bars. So let's try those 2 bars 4 times through. And then the last line of page 1, which is the second line of page B, you've got 2 bars there that are the same, and they are also the same as bar 11, which was the first bar of section B. So you're just playing those 16th note single strokes on the hi-hat again, accenting the downbeats, playing the backbeat on the 2 and 4 on the bass drum, and then going into the first line of page 2. So at bar 15, we've got the same bar as what we played in bar 12, so we're just opening that hi-hat for an 8th note on the and of 4 again. And then bar 16, we've got the same thing for the first 2 counts, or the first 2 beats. You're playing those accents on the downbeats, on the hi-hat, 16th notes, bass drum on the 2, and then the third beat is changing to 2 16ths and an 8th note. So you've got 3E and on the hi-hat, you're still accenting the downbeats, you've got 3E and, just ending on the and instead of the obviously, because you've got that 8th note, and then we've got a quarter note on the 4 on the crash and the snare. So that's the downbeat of 4, obviously, and that's accented again, okay? So you're still accenting those downbeats, you're just changing the rhythm a little bit, and obviously the orchestration, so you're moving it to the crash and the snare on the 4th beat. Okay, so let's just try just bar 16, just to get that slight change up in that bar. We'll try it 4 times through. And in bar 17, you can see you've got slash notation. So you've got some freedom to improvise in this bar. And above the bar it says fill. So you want to improvise a fill. Okay, now if you look at the last note of the previous bar, so the last note of bar 16, when you played that crash and snare as an accent together, you've got a tie coming off those notes. Okay, so they tie into the first beat of the bar that you're playing the fill in. So remember, a tie extends a note. So you've got a quarter note on that crash and snare. So you're going to hold that note for a quarter note, which will last until the 1, which is the first beat of the bar where the fill is. But because it's tied, it's going to tie into that 1. So we're not going to play the 1. We can play any other part of it, but we're not playing that downbeat of 1. Okay, just the downbeat. So it's going to tie into the first part of the beat, the 1. Okay, now you can let it tie for as short or as long a note as you want. So you can tie it to a quarter note if you leave the whole 1, or you could tie it to an 8th note if you want to come in on the and. You could tie it to a 16th note if you want to come in on the E, or you could tie it to a dotted 8th note if you want to come in on the A. Okay, the important thing is you're not going to play the 1. And by the 1, I mean the downbeat, okay, the very start of the beat. So you want to make sure you feel that part of the beat, so the downbeat, but don't play it. You can play any other part of the first beat, the E, the and, or the A. So you're going to play a fill for that bar, an improvised fill. Just don't play the 1, because obviously the crash and snare are tying into the 1. You can play the E of 1, the and of 1, or the A of 1, and obviously the rest of the bar. Okay, so what we're going to do now is try bars 16 and 17. So to make sure we can play that crash and snare and hold it into that 1, we're going to tie it into the first beat of the fill bar. Okay, so you want to crash on the 4 with the snare, don't play the 1 but feel the 1, and then play any other part of the 1, so any of the upbeats, the E, the and, or the A. Okay, and then you can see beneath the bar you've got a crescendo, so you also want to get louder on that fill. Okay, so there's quite a bit to practice here, so I'm going to try bars 16 and 17 to make sure you've got that tie, and also you can play the crescendo for the fill. And then at the end of that fill bar, you can see we've got a double bar line, as this is the end of section B, okay? So we're going to put it all together now. So we're going to hook up those parts in section B and play the whole section. So remember, for this whole section, you're at forte, so just make sure you're bringing the energy for this section, okay? So let's try the whole of section B. Okay, so now let's try section B with a backing track. So for this part, you're really holding the grooves. You're playing that backbeat on the bass drum, okay? So make sure you're feeling that the bass drum as a backbeat note. And then you've got the end of the section, that nice fill crescendoing into the new section. Okay, so let's try the whole of section B with the backing track. So then we come into section C, so you can see we've got a C in a box there. So bar 18 is the first bar of section C. So you've got eighth notes now on the cymbal. So we start with a crash on the 1 and the rest of the eighth notes are played on the hi-hat. So you've got 1 up here, then and 2 and 3 and 4 and on the hi-hat. You've got the snare drum playing all the downbeats. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on the snare for this groove. Okay, so let's try that hand part now. So we got this. Okay, so you want to get that down with your hands, get a feel for that. And then the bass drum is playing the 1. There's a quarter note rest on 2. We've got an eighth note rest on 3, and it's playing the and of 3 for an eighth note. We've got an eighth note rest on 4, and we're playing the and of 4 as an eighth note as well. Okay, so you've got the bass drum with the crash at the start of the bar and with the snare. And then you've got the bass drum on the and of 3 and the and of 4, which goes against the snare drum. Okay, because obviously the snare drum's playing the downbeats. So snare drum plays the downbeats, bass drum plays the upbeats on 3 and 4. So 3 and 4 sound like this. Okay, so you've got snare kick, obviously the eighth notes on the hi-hat. Okay, so let's try to put the whole of that bar together. So this dynamic, you can see beneath the bar is F as well, so we're still at forte. All right, so let's try the first bar of section C, bar 18 4 times through. So that's a really nice Motown groove, just hitting all those downbeats on the snare, which is very common of a Motown groove. So after that bar, you can see we've got a 1 bar repeat, then we've got another 1 bar repeat and another 1 bar repeat on that line. Okay, so there's 3 1 bar repeats, which means we play that groove 4 times. So we play it the original time, we're repeating again, and repeating again. Okay, so you're playing that bar 4 times for that line, which is why you've got those numbers above the 1 bar repeats. So when we repeat a groove a few times, it's easy to lose count of how many times we played it, so we can just keep an eye on those numbers there above the bars. Okay, so where it says 2 in brackets, that's the second time you played the groove, 3 in brackets, the third time you played the groove, and 4 is the fourth time you played the groove. Okay, obviously we naturally feel those 4 bars, so you'll normally feel that 4th bar. So when you're playing that groove for the 4th time, you'll feel it's the 4th time, and when you look at the music, you can see there. That's where you are the 4th time of playing it, where the 4 is in brackets. Okay. Coming into the next line, we've got another 3 1 bar repeats. You've got 5, 6, and 7 in brackets there. So you're playing that groove 7 times in total. Okay, you play it the original time, and then there's 6 1 bar repeats. So you're playing it 7 times, that Motown groove. Now you can see there's brackets around the crash cymbal on the Motown groove. So looking back at bar 18, so you can see there's brackets around the crash cymbal on 1. That's because you only play that crash on the first bar, the first time of playing that groove. So we've just seen we're playing that groove 7 times. So for time 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, the 6 1 bar repeats, you're not going to play that crash on the 1. You're just going to play a hi-hat. Okay? Because obviously that crash emphasizes the start of something, so you only want to hear it at the start of the section. Okay? You don't want to keep hearing that crash every bar. Okay? So only crash on that 1. And then we come into bar 25. So we've got the same Motown groove, but we're changing up the bass rhythm. So there's no bass drum on 1. You can see we've got a half note rest there. and we're playing that bass drum on the and of 3 like we had in the Motown groove originally, and then we're changing up the 4th beat to play a little break on the snare. So you're just playing 4E and, we've got 2 16th notes and an 8th note on the snare. Right, left, right on the snare drum. Okay, so we're just going to try just that bar. Okay, so bar 25, just hitting those downbeats for 3 counts on the snare drum, and then changing up the 4th beat to play the snare 4E and. Okay, so that rhythm on the snare drum. Okay, make sure you're not playing that bass drum on the downbeat of 1. Okay, so let's try that bar 4 times through. And that's the end of section C, so we're going to put that section together. So we've got that Motown groove, we crash in, we're at forte for this section. You play that Motown groove for 7 bars, but we only crash on the 1st bar. And then we've got that slight change up in the 8th bar of section C, where we're just leaving out the bass drum on the 1, and we're adding that break on the snare on the 4E and. So let's try the whole of section C. And now we'll try section C with a backing track. So this is a really groovy section. You need to make sure you're playing that Motown groove with a lot of feel, because that's going to carry the feel of the music. Okay, you got it for 7 bars. And then when you have that change up in the 8th bar of section C, where we play 40 and on the snare drum, that break on the snare drum, you're playing that as a band hit, okay? Band hits. So you're playing that with the rest of the band. So again, make sure it's really sharp and in time, that 4E and. Okay, so let's give the whole of section C a try now with a backing track. So then we come to the final section of the song, so section D. So you can see you've got the letter D in a box there letting you know it's section D. So if we look at the first 4 bars of section D, so the first 2 lines, we can see on the hi-hat we've got the same thing as what we played in section A and B. So those single strokes on the hi-hat as 16th notes, accenting those downbeats. Okay, so obviously we've done that before, we've had good practice at that. Now for the first 4 bars of section D, we've just got a bass rhythm to hit. Okay, we've got different bass rhythms to hit. So the first bar of section D, we're playing the bass drum just on the 2. So you can see we've got a quarter note rest on 1, we've got a quarter note on 2 that we're playing, and we've got a half note rest on 3 and 4. So we just play that bass drum on the 2, and that note's accented on the bass drum. So you're going to play that accent on the bass drum on beat 2. Now you're playing that with an accented downbeat on the hands as well. So it's quite simple to do, playing an accent together. So then looking at the next bar of section D, so bar 27, you've got no bass drums in that bar. Okay, so you're just playing that hi-hat, accenting the downbeats on the hi-hat, playing 16th notes. Bar 28 is the same as bar 26, so you're just playing that 2 again, accented on the 2 on the bass drum. So coming to bar 29, you can see we've got a bass drum on the and of 1 and the 4. Okay, so the and of 1, obviously that upbeat, we aren't accenting with the hands. So we're going to look at that first beat, okay, so you're accenting the downbeat on the hi-hat, so we've got, and then we've got the non-accent note on the E, and then we've got a non-accented note with the and, which is where the accented bass drum is going to play. So we've got an accented bass drum and a non-accented hi-hat note. So we're going to try those 2 first of all, okay? Keeping non-accent here on the hi-hat, but accenting the bass drum. Okay, so it's quite difficult to do because when you play an accent, your whole body wants the accent. Okay, so you need like this mixing board where one can play louder than the other. Okay, so really work on that. So if we just try just that beat, okay, so we're going to play 1E ander with the hands, and we're going to play the and on the bass drum, nice and slow. So you've got. Okay, so just making sure that accented note on the and doesn't affect the hands, okay, because obviously you're not playing an accented note on the and with the hands. So really isolate that beat to get hold of that, and then we're going to try that whole bar, okay, so all you need to do is add in that bass drum on the 4, so we're accenting that bass drum on the 4, so that's easier because obviously you're playing an accent on the 4 with the hands as well. Okay, so let's try bar 29 4 times through, just to get a hold of that accent on the upbeat and that accent on the downbeat of 4 as well. And now we'll try all 4 of those bars. So the first 4 bars are section D. So we're doing the same thing with our hands. We've just got different bass drum rhythms to hit. Okay, so let's see if we can hit all 4 of them bars. And then we come into the last line of section D, which is the last line of the piece. So you can see in the first bar of the last line, you've got the same thing on the hi-hat, just playing 16th note single strokes, accent in the downbeats. Now the bass drum is playing all 4 downbeats. Okay, so we're just going to hit those downbeats. Then in the next bar, we've got the same thing, but we're just changing up the third beat. So the third beat on the hi-hat, you've got 3E and, so 2 16ths and an 8th note. Still got that bass drum on the 3, and then we're playing a crash, snare, and bass drum on the 4th beat. Okay, so the bass drum is still playing all the downbeats in that bar. We're just changing up the hand rhythm slightly, and obviously where we're playing things. So we're changing up onto the crash and snare on the 4th beat, and that is tied to a whole note on the last bar. So you're going to let that note on the crash, snare and bass drum ring for the whole last bar, and you can see we've got a fermata above the note, that last note of the piece. So you're just going to pause, just hold that note, okay? So you're just going to crash on the snare, bass drum and snare drum on the 4th beat, the second bar of the last line, and just hold it for the whole of that last bar. Okay, and obviously that fermata tells you that there's no time. You're just going to hold it till the end of the track. Okay, so let's try the whole of the last line. First bar, very similar to what you've already done, just playing a bass drum on all 4 downbeats. Second bar, again, quite similar to what you've already played, like a combination of the previous bar, so bar 30, and also the bar you played in bar 16, where we played a crash and snare on the 4th beat, the downbeat of 4. Okay, but now we've got the bass drum with it as well. So remember that bass drum rhythm isn't changing. It's just hitting all the downbeats, and just make sure you hold that last note. Okay, so we're not playing anything in the last bar, but our note is still ringing from the previous bar. Okay, so you just need to hold it. Okay, so remember those ties extend the note. We don't play it again. We just hold the duration out. So just let those notes ring. Okay, so we've still got accents on all the downbeats for this line. So let's give the final line of the piece a try. We can see the dynamic is FF fortissimo, so it's very loud. Okay, so we need to bring the dynamic up even further. So let's try the last line of the piece. And that's the whole of section D. So we're going to put the whole section together. Okay, so emphasis on all the downbeats for this part, and just make sure we're playing those hits on the bass drum at the right points, and making sure we go up to fortissimo for the last line, and make sure you got that change up on the rhythm of the hi-hat in the last line, where we come into the end of the piece on the crash, snare and kick. Let's try the whole of section D. And now we're going to try section D with a backing track. Okay, so the first 4 bars of section D, where you're playing the bass drum rhythms against those 16 notes on the hi-hat, those bass hits are with the rest of the band. Okay, so you need to make sure you hit them at the right point, otherwise you're really going to notice playing out of time, because obviously the rest of the band isn't going to be playing. So make sure they're right in time with the rest of the band, that you're hitting those bass drums at the right points of the bar, and then coming into the final section, make sure you lift the dynamic to fortissimo, and then it kind of all gets louder, the rest of the band gets louder, to a nice finish. And just holding that note on the 4 for that fermata. Okay, so let's try section D with the backing track. So So now we're going to put the whole track together. So we're going to play the whole piece with a backing track. Okay, so now you've played each section individually. You've obviously got a feel for the piece. Okay, so make sure you're really carrying the feel of this song. Okay, it's really groovy. It's funk. Okay, so there's a lot of feel in funk. It's all upbeat and good feeling. And there's a Motown section as well. Okay, so you've really got to carry that across in your drumming. Play nice and relaxed. Feel completely in control. Portray those accents on the hi-hat really nicely and relaxed, okay? So it sounds good. That's the important thing with this piece. It really needs to sound tidy and good, and you can only do that by being relaxed. So make sure you've got all of these sections, you're comfortable at playing them, okay? And you're not kind of rigid and unrelaxed, because that's going to come across in your playing and it's not going to portray the feel of the track. Okay, so let's try the whole track now in time with the backing track. Let's have some fun. So I hope you enjoyed that piece, and remember, as always, we practice through the song parts at song tempo. Okay, so it's 117 beats per minute, which is fast. So that's your goal tempo. That's the tempo you want to get to eventually. So practice all of these parts nice and slowly at a comfortable tempo for you, and as you get more and more comfortable with the parts, gradually increase the tempo until you're at song tempo. That's when you want to try it with a track. Don't try it with a track too early when you're not ready and you're not comfortable, because you don't want to be this rigid drummer who's rushing everything and is not comfortable, because when someone watches that, it's uncomfortable to watch, and honestly, you can hear it as well. When you hear an unrelaxed, uncomfortable drummer, it doesn't sound good, so you can't enjoy the music. So that's the biggest thing to really develop as a musician. Practice things, but don't rush into performing them and finalizing them. Practice them until it feels good. Okay, you feel good playing them, and if you feel good playing them, it's going to sound good as well. Okay, so get to that point before you play the parts of the music. Once you're there, you'll have fun playing the track. That's what we want. Okay, so we'll have fun with this one, and we'll see you in the next one.